This is the brand new Lumix GH7 camera, which I'm really excited to try. I'm going to go over the main new exciting features that stand out the most to me from a videographer perspective, as well as looking at the image quality and the colors. Now, I've been thinking about trying something different lately. So when this was announced, I was quite excited and I thought, if I like it enough, I might actually switch from full frame to micro four thirds. Now, that's kind of for another video that I'm working on as well, so stay tuned for that one next week. But in this video, I want to focus on this camera. So I've just found out that there's a software update for the GH7, which actually includes Arri Log C3 profile. And that's going to allow color matching with Arri cameras, and it's also been certified by Arri themselves. Cannot wait to try that. I'm going to have to do a video of some sort, so make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for that one. Arri cameras are the cameras that everybody looks up to in the cinema world. Mind is blown. If you're used to a Lumix S9, for example, the GH range has a slightly bulky body, which I actually prefer because if you're primarily a video shooter, you hold the camera in a different way. So it allows you to get stable handheld footage just from the shape of the camera. The way it's well distributed. It's also got a fan in there for unlimited recording, but even with the fan, it is dust and splash resistant. And it's also got this vari-angle flip screen, so you can have a little bit more flexibility with how you view the monitor. And I really like that. It just gives you a few more options when it comes to seeing what you're doing, basically. Which is quite important. It's got a few more physical buttons on the camera, so that gives you more options for flexibility and customizing the camera how you like. That has opened up a few more options for me. Makes me use features more often that I don't because I have to go into the menu system to select them. So this makes it even faster to use. It's also got a lock switch and a locking dial, so you don't change modes by accident. To be honest, that's never happened with me, but extra peace of mind. There's an information button here that displays the camera settings. I never use that because I have my camera settings around the screen as it is. Because you can customize it however you like, I've set that up to be a frame marker. So I've got a vertical view frame marker, so I know if I'm framing something up for Instagram and YouTube, I'll make sure to position the subject within those frame markers. And that's just a really handy tool that I can just switch on and off from the press of a button. We've got a record button on the front of this camera, which I really like. When you are filming yourself, you're always in front of the camera, so it's nice to be able to just press that button there rather than trying to find it on the top of the camera. It's also got tally lights front and back, which you can change the brightness of. Love it. Right. Thought since you're watching a Lumix video, you might be interested in this. Been a lot of drama surrounding this camera. Not sure what to make of it. I've tried it earlier before the launch, like a pre-production version, but I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the real thing. Here we go. The S9. What colour have they sent me? Oh yes, it's a black one. That's quite nice actually. Prefer it in black. I had a red one before. Wasn't much of a fan, but the black one looks slick, sleek. It's amazing that my perception of this camera has changed. Just seeing it in a different colour, the quality looks a lot better than it did before. Anyway, stay tuned for that video because it's coming soon. Maybe, we'll see. Where was I? Let's look at the image quality. As expected, the image quality looks really nice. It's got a really good highlight roll-off. I think that's due to the extended dynamic range that are in these GH cameras now. It just seems a little bit easier to expose your footage without those horrible overexposed highlights. The colours look great. Vlog profile's my favourite profile to work with. The colours look fantastic. Different to the S5, different to what I'm used to. I'm not saying that's better or worse, I'm just saying it's different. In my comparison video, I'm going to show you more side-by-sides, but I think it's just what I'm used to basically, and that kind of goes with, it's the same with any camera. It's whatever you're used to, and then you try something different. It's always going to throw you off a little bit to start with. Plus, when you're not comparing it to something else directly, you don't usually spot these things, you just take it for what it is. Is it a nice image? Has it got good colours? Yes, it has. Now, the thing is, even though it's the same camera brand and it's Vlog, the colours are different, so I wouldn't feel comfortable using both of these cameras side by side. Yes, you can match them, but it takes a little bit longer to get there. So if you're not prepared to take that extra step in color grading them, I highly recommend, if you are going to have two different cameras, getting the same one rather than one of one and then one of another. Plus, then you've got to have different set of lenses. So stick with one. Usually with micro four third cameras, with my tests, They don't perform as well as full frame cameras in low light, but I was actually quite surprised at this. It wasn't too far behind the S5 Mark II, so not too bad in low light. If you make sure it's well lit, then you're gonna be okay. It doesn't have dual native ISO, so if you do need to boost it a little bit and add a little bit of extra light, you might struggle in the higher ISOs. You're gonna get a little bit of extra noise. I've always maintained that if you can light something properly, if you've got the ability to do that, if you've got the lights and they're powerful enough, then you should be able to get a good image, whatever you're using really. And it's definitely not the worst I've seen, to be honest. I've seen worse Sony cameras and they're meant, you know what, no, I'm not gonna go there. So this actually shoots 120 frames a second in 4K with no crop and 240 frames a second at 1080p. There are a few limitations though. For example, if you're filming 120 frames a second, you lose the human autofocus detection mode. Now, I don't know if that will be fixed in the firmware. I'm not sure, that was just what it was like on my model. Honestly, 240 frames a second. With the test I did, I filmed this guitar clip, and if you look at the strings, they're almost like pixelated. So the quality isn't great going to 240 frames per second at 1080p. So I would stay away from that. If you're filming other subjects in daylight where you've got plenty of light, it might be absolutely fine. You might get away with that. But 120 frames a second looks a lot better. And if you don't need, if 120 does it for you, then I'd stick to that. If you want real super slow-mo, and that's like the main part of your filming, then you're probably going to be looking at a more specialized camera that does those higher frame rates anyway. If you want a little bit of a faster workflow, this has real-time LUT, which is Lumix's thing. You can actually select a vlog profile and add a custom LUT to that profile, so you don't have to do any color grading. All the color grading is done for you because you put that LUT in there and that's baked into your footage. So as long as you expose it properly, you're gonna get a great image without doing any work. And that's perfect for people who have a fast turnaround for making content. I think it's a great feature, but personally, I like that flexibility after, because when you're working quickly, you don't always expose things properly. So it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility. And if you're gonna go in and adjust things after anyway, you may as well do the whole thing after. It's only a little bit of an extra step in my opinion, but it's nice to have it. Plus what I'd really like about it is they've taken that feature to the next level by adding LUT opacity. So you can actually dial in or dial back the amount of that LUT that you're adding onto the footage, which I think is a great idea. That's what you do in post anyway. Plus some LUTs can look a little bit too heavy at first, so it's nice to be able to dial it back a little bit to where you prefer. Open gate recording, love that feature. I'm actually starting a new channel very soon and I've been filming a lot of content. Some of it is going to live on YouTube, some of it's going to live on Instagram, which means I need to film it twice, one horizontal and one vertical. But with Open Gate, I can just film the entire thing and then crop it to suit for whatever platform. So that saves either a lot of time filming things twice, or it saves me having another camera setup and going through and editing the footage twice. It's also a great feature if you're filming with anamorphic lenses, because you're going to get slightly different aspect ratios rather than that really thin spaghetti-like footage that you can get. Here's what's really cool about this camera. When I heard this, I thought, yeah, this is new. You can actually film ProRes Raw completely internally to the CF Express card in here. So no need for an external recorder, no need for SSD drive, which you can do, by the way. If you want to record your ProRes to an SSD drive, you can plug that straight in there. But being able to film RAW straight to a CF Express card, that's gonna change a lot of things for a lot of people. That's kind of what made my ears prick up a little bit with this camera, because I thought, I've been thinking about using RAW lately, and if this does it without the need for an external recorder, I think maybe this could be where I go. I've not had a chance to play much with the RAW footage as of yet, but stay tuned because I'm gonna have a video all about that. When you're filming in 4K RAW, there's a crop. But when you go to 5.7K RAW, there is no crop. So if I'm filming in RAW, I'm going to film in 5.7K. Don't know why that is. I need to look at the specs properly.
At the end of the day, it's a camera for less than £2,000. To get all that in a camera in one single package, it's pretty good. Yeah. It's very impressive.
You can also record proxies in here as well. So if you're collaborating with a team who are editing it remotely, or even if you're doing it yourself, you've got proxies already transcoded for you within the camera, so you can edit the files and then reattach the original files after. I feel like Lumix are really thinking about the creator, the content creators, and trying to speed up people's workflows with little features like that and the real-time look. I'm used to a specific workflow. If it works, like, don't try and fix it, and I don't like change, so I kind of just get on with the way I've always done things. But it is nice to see these little things creeping their way in, and it will change the way people work, and it will speed up people's workflow. All the little things like that in a tiny little camera. It's great. I tried a red Komodo last week and the image looked fantastic. I started looking at the prices. They are expensive. Or the price doesn't seem too bad to begin with, but when you start looking at all the extra things that you need to add to make it functional, like a monitor, like handles, storage is a big one. You have to spend so much on storage. Lens mounts, if you don't want to go down the RF lens route. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. You know, the image may not be as good as those cinema cameras, but when you think of the functionality in these little tiny things, you've got to give them credit because they do so much and they do it so well. The log footage on these cameras, you can't fault it. It looks absolutely great. It almost stands up to the red Komodo. Yes, it's not quite there, obviously, but it's good enough for someone like me. For what you get for the price, you can't go wrong. You can't grumble at it. You know, we could look at, shall I stop there? I'm going to show you some autofocus tests and stabilization tests in a minute, but another new feature this camera has, they've actually introduced 32-bit float within the camera if you use the XLR adapter. If you don't know what 32-bit float is, kind of explain it more in this video. It basically allows you to work a little bit faster because you don't have to set your audio levels perfectly whilst you're recording, because it captures so much information. You can actually bring the volume down or up without distorting it or affecting your audio track. I always recommend to make sure your audio is spot on anyway. It's just good practice and it's going to be less time in your editor anyway. I mean, the biggest scenario for something like this that makes it really good is if you're filming a wedding speech and you can barely hear the person, so you have to turn the gain right up, but then everybody starts clapping in the room. The claps are really loud and the vocals a lot lower. You get that spike in volume and it starts distorting. With 32-bit float, you can bring down the level of those claps and make sure your audio is nice and even. This audio unit will be available at the end of July 2024. Something like this is great if you're like a documentary filmmaker or if you're capturing content on the go and you do all the audio yourself, because you can plug in a professional microphone with XLR there and get really good audio, get more control over your audio with these extra settings here. I don't have an XLR microphone for the camera. I just plug in this Comica microphone straight into the camera. That's all I use all the time. It's nice and simple. It's all I need, and I've ruined it now. There we go. But if you are a little bit more serious than me about the audio, then highly recommend one of these. It's got this little lock thing on it, so it's not going to come off by accident. The new autofocus modes and phase detection is in this camera now. So what you see on the G9 Mark II, the S5 Mark II is in this as well. So you've got the extra modes. You've got human and eye, you've got animal, body and eye. You've got car, you've got motorcycle and helmet priority, you've got train and airplane as well. It's just nice to see a few more modes creeping in. Whatever you're doing, it's just nice to have reliable autofocus. Stabilization, I mean, it's great on the Micro Four Thirds cameras anyway. Absolutely blown away with these new modes because we have E-stabilization mode, but within that we've got standard and high. There's a little bit of a crop on both, but as you can see, it's absolutely incredible. The normal mode, where you've just got the lens stabilization on, that looks like quality handheld footage. You know, when you've got a shoulder rig or a handheld rig, natural looking handheld footage, that's what it looks like. You don't have those shakes and warps. But then when you go into standard E-stabilization mode or high, it's like using a gimbal. When you're walking forwards, I mean, in these examples, I was just walking normally. I wasn't trying to be smooth or anything. Just walking normally, normal walking pace. Honestly, it blows my mind. It's fantastic. I don't know how they've done it, but it looks incredible. I'm not really one to use a high stabilization mode because sometimes it can look a bit unnatural, but this looks great, so I will be using that mode a little bit more. Now, if you're vlogging and you add that stabilization mode, it's going to crop in, so you're going to need a super wide angle lens to make sure you can get in, because, I mean, what are we at the moment? 12mm. It's not too bad. Let me just film a little bit. Here's an example. Okay, I haven't got a memory card in. Right, so this is at 12mm. As you can see, I'm at arm's length away. You just get my head and shoulders in. I mean, it's stable anyway. It's a good stabilization in this camera as normal. But when I switch to stabilization mode, the first mode, it's a tiny bit more cropped in. So I am losing a bit more of my environment. I know it's not the best test because I'm not outside and showing more in the background. But then when I switch to the high mode, it's even more cropped in. So just bear that in mind. If you want to do vlogging and you want to use these stabilization modes, you will have to have a super wide lens. I'd love to know your thoughts on the new GH7, so please leave your comments below. If you've got any questions about this camera, also leave them below. I've got a full comparison coming between the S5 Mark II and the GH7, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that one. And in the meantime, have a good week, and I'll see you in the next one.